Very good morning, distinguished guests. Srimati Dr. Rubina Bose, the session chair for today's webinar, and the guest speakers for today's webinar, Mr. Chinmay Roy and Mr. Arjun Guha, and Honorary Director General of All India Drugs Control Officers Confederation, Mr. Uday Bhaskar, and all the Executive Council and Central Council members of AIDCOC, and the regulatory colleagues joining from the CDSU and the state FDAs, and industry and academia participating for today's webinar. I'm so pleased to welcome you all for today's webinar on data integrity. Indeed, it's the 37th webinar on AIDCOC Training Academy. And we are so honored to start our first webinar of AIDCOC by inviting Dr. Rubina Bose ma'am as the guest speaker. And indeed, on today's program, we are so honored to have an opportunity to have Dr. Rubina ma'am as a session chair for today's program. Thank you so much, ma'am, for accepting our invitation and joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, on today's program, we are going to talk about the importance of the data integrity and the regulator's perspective and the compliance measurements needed by the industry to meet the expectations of the regulatory agencies. As we know, the international regulatory agencies, even including the Indian agencies, are always promoting the risk-based approaches to ensure the fitness of the methodologies adopted. But still, many a times, even the big pharma industries find it difficult to maintain the compliance. And we have been seeing the data integrity are the major points of concerns in the FDA's 483s in the present past. So in today's program, we are going to delve into these topics and discuss how the regulators are trying to keep up with the pace of technological advancements and how our industry is innovating and adopting these technologies. So please help me with inviting Dr. Rubina Bose, ma'am, the session chair, for her opening remarks. Please, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity again to be part of this esteemed panel in which we have great speakers and this very important topic, data integrity, for this current perspective. So I think while we talk about this, when the speakers would be enlightening this audience and who are here expecting with a lot of their questions, maybe also for this, how to ensure this, the regulators are here. So they're the basic, they will be actually enlightening them. I would like to just say that as a regulators, we would like to highlight what is the expectation of the patients, consumers. It is always their expectation that each batch of the medicines they take they meet the quality standards, and therefore they should be safe and effective. And about all the regulations, probably when we talk about the regulations, the most important being the GMP standards, which is, though data integrity is applicable, the scope is applicable to GXP, the GCP, the good clinical practices, good distribution practices, trade and distribution practices, all practices in the pharmaceuticals. But right now, being more focused on these GMP regulations, I would like to say about this, that in the GMP, there are some examples like which is the main standard for ensuring this quality and safety efficacy which the consumers and the patient expect, that facilities are well designed not only and in good conditions, that not only that the equipment should be properly maintained and calibrated, employees are also to be qualified and fully trained, as well as the processes are reliable and are well documented. Like when we say the processes are reliable and consistent and also reproducible, and it should be documented and recorded following the principles which our speakers would be explaining in detail. I know the ALCOA plus principles, that is attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, accurate, which are also complete, consistent, enduring, and available. So these are the examples how the GMP requirements help to assure that the quality, safety, and efficacy of the drug products are maintained. And when we say these data integrity, we probably, it refers to that concept and the process, which is the completeness, consistency, and accuracy of the data. So it should be that complete, consistent, and accurate data also should be attributable, legible, contemporaneously recorded. We use the words again and again, which we always see. It's not only falsification of the data, but also the missing of the contemporaneous. I think the speakers would be explaining it in detail. So it should be original or true copy, and also should be accurate. So as Lakshmi was mentioning, that in the recent years, all these various observations were very alarming to all the regulators all over the world, and the maximum observations on the data integrity, the record management, documentation practices, which covers all, as I said, not only GMP, but GCP, good laboratory practices, good distribution practices. What must be the reason? It must be more reliance on untrained, inadequate human practices, which can be poorly defined procedures, which can be use of computerized systems that are not capable of meeting the regulatory requirements and or are inappropriately managed and validated, and also the failure to adequately review and manage the data. So all the regulatory agencies like WHO in the recent past, very recently in 2021, has published the new guidelines, WHO TRS 1033, which has replaced the earlier guidelines on the guidelines on the data integrity as an annexure 4. And when we have prepared the Schedule M was published as a draft, it was based on the earlier draft guidelines on this data integrity, but it has mostly written the past requirements. And also the US FDA has the guidelines for this. All the regulatory agencies, MHRA, as well as the PICS have recently published not recently, in the 2019 have published the guidelines, and that is actually the inspectors writing guideline for the inspectors. So these are all the regulatory agencies had to come up with these various guidelines on this data integrity, which explains not only the computerized systems validation or maintaining the electronic data, but also how the manual data should be maintained. Like, what is the expectation? What should be the expectation for a electronic, manual, as well as a hybrid data? So all the terminology are very well explained. I know the speakers would be coming up. I will not take much time. In the WHO guidelines, like as it when these guidelines are prepared, it takes the views and a public consultation process of all the member states. So it has been prepared in a very simpler manner, a rather simpler manner, but it's not so simple to read and understand. And also, it has a lot of examples of all this terminology which has come in this ALCOA Plus. So what we mean by this? So there are very simple examples to make the people understand. So I think we will now listen to the speakers. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and also I'll be here as a part of this panel to listen. Thank you. Over to Lakshmi.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You have rightly touched upon the importance of the ALCOA principles and the recent guidelines of the PICS and the WHO, and you have rightly set the context for today's discussion. So now we will listen from the experts who have been, who have been involved in the process of the CSV and the data integrity for so many years. So I would like to invite Mr. Chinmay Roy and to briefly describe about Mr. Chinmay Roy. He is a BTech graduate from IIT Kharagpur, and he is a seasoned life science professional and subject matter expert. And his skill set crosses over multiple areas from engineering, informational technology, laboratory system, validation, and QA processes. Indeed, he uses this experience in the areas to assist biopharma and medical devices company to improve and to innovate their business operations. And earlier, he worked as a technical lead in Genentech and helped and directed almost 60 personnel in the design and installation and obtaining the fit to use certification of the world's largest paperless biopharma manufacturing facility. Chinmay Rai, we're so glad to have you with us. And I'm also pleased to mention that he has authored several QA governance documents and facilitated numerous quality risk assessments for the client companies. And he is the resource person on the international platforms on the subject of the data integrity. And he has also been on the several DI discussion panels with the FDA departmental managers and the industry experts. With that, I would like to thank once again Mr. Chinmay for joining from California in the late evening hours for the benefit of our AIDCOC members. And we welcome you for your talk, sir.
There I go. Thank you very much, Lakshmi, and welcome to all of you. It's a pleasure to talk to all of you, and hopefully I would be able to at least make sure that your time today is not a waste, and hopefully I'll be able to share something with all of you. And as Lakshmi said, yes, I am coming to you right now from outside of San Francisco, California, but I travel very often to India, not as much after the COVID. So I am, as you can see, I was born and raised in Bombay, and I'm quite familiar with the scene, the biopharmaceutical scene in the Indian industry. So what I'm going to do today is that, I have also gone and audited companies along with former FDA officers in India. And I also go to Europe. And in my presentation, I'm going to give you several case studies in between. As I keep speaking, what do I see on the data integrity side? And so that you can pick up, you can remember, if you can relate the stories to the discussions I'm doing. Now, my colleague is following me. What I'm going to do is the business aspect of data integrity, and Arjun is going to follow right after me, and he's going to talk more about the principles of ALCOA Plus. Now it has become ALCOA Plus Plus, which is traceability has been added now, the second plus by the European agency. So they call it ALCOA Plus Plus. So let me begin. Let me share my screen, and here it is. Share. I went too far out. Let me begin right from the top. Okay, let me slideshow from beginning. Okay, there you go. So this is the top slide. So in the agenda, we will talk about the fundamental concepts. I'm going to talk about a process-centric organization. As you can see, there is no ALCOA Plus in my agenda. You will see something similar when Arjun comes on. But I'm going to talk mostly about the business process and how it impacts data integrity in a company. Why DI problems occur, right? What is the data manipulation triangle? I'm going to talk about that, and why people do what they do with data and try to manipulate the data. And there is a science behind it, behavioral science. Now, and then we'll talk about a data integrity maturity model and warning letter trend. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So the fundamental concepts of data integrity, you may hear so many words and people talk about ALCOA Plus, then next day you wake up and they talk about ALCOA Plus, and you start wondering, what's all this going on? And in the sometimes you think, ye koi tamasha hai kya, khel chal raha hai, kya ho raha hai? Simple, kuch nahi ho raha hai. It is just about trustworthiness of data. The data that you are presenting to the regulators should be trustworthy. and it has to be maintained within the original context. Why I've redlined the original context is many people think if you change the data, then it is no longer trustworthy. That's not true. You can change the original data, but there has to be a trail. Who changed it? What was the previous value? What is the value now? When was it changed? What date, time, everything. You can change, but it has to be maintained within the original context. Now, I know some of you are thinking about 5 steps ahead already and saying, oh, original context. So you mean raw data. Absolutely right. So raw data, very important. And in 2011, I was also a member of the Data Integrity Interest Group of the ISPE. And we did a lot of studies, and we did the trending studies and all. When the US FDA and the other regulatory agencies started to issue warning letters way back in 2011 for the first time, most of the warning letters were on raw data. And the industry started asking, what is raw data? They did not know the meaning of raw data. So raw data and metadata. Then the industry learned, and 2-3 years later, if you follow the warning letter trend, they fell off, because then the industry said, oh, this is what you want. So when people used to go and show a chromatogram, they used to go and say, here, this is the printout. And they said, no, we need the metadata, the electronic version of that graph, because there is much more information in there than just a paper printout. So please understand the original context, which means raw data, and the trustworthiness. Now, how do you prove to them that this data you're showing to the regulators, how do you prove to them that it can be trusted? You have to demonstrate to them that you have securely protected this. Access control, who can access, who cannot access. Audit trail, who did access, and when did that person access? Audit trail. Continuous control, I have underlined. You can read it. I'm not going to read everything, but the underline is what I'm going to show. So fundamentally, you have to show them that your data was protected, and that is, and it has been under your continuous control, command and control. I know I go to many companies and I go to their server room. Now, entry into their server room is very secure. They have rules and in place where they have to escort you, not only make you sign at the door, the book that is kept there, but there has to be a person escorting you in the server room, not watching you, but even telling you where to go, where not to go, what are you looking at. So that's the amount of continuous control to that level. In some cases, you have to maintain. Now, these are usually data centers. Okay, so I don't know if you have heard of Master Control, but Master Control has their offices in Salt Lake City, and I went to audit them 2 days. That's their world headquarters. And they maintain our data because it's a cloud-based system now. And all the data from all their clients are maintained in their data center. They won't even let us enter. They said, we don't even let our CEO in there. Very true. And they have 10 levels of control. Outside, there is a card, and then you go inside, then inside, till you finally get in. So what are you going to show the regulators? See how much in control we are. Not just through this door, but through 8 doors. Where has the person gone? Now, how is it realized? When you make a drug, they look at your science. They look at your formulation. They look at what has been added by the machines, by the automation systems, and then you get the quality of the product, right? But for a product that is called data, data is being produced by the people in your company. And that data is a product of the business process in your company, not your science, not your equipment, not your control systems, but by your entire, the CEO on down, their organization and how they operate to get hold of that data or to preserve the continuous command and control of the data. So in a process-centric company, leverage processes to derive business outcomes. So you have to look at the process. If you don't understand this particular bullet item now, wait till I get further deep down, and then you can look at it. This is a high level. Also focus, as Dr. Bose said, also focused on associated elements, people, their supervisors, and leadership. And better understanding by employees. Again, Dr. Bose mentioned that, the training and empowerment of employees. I'm an Indian, so I know the Indian culture. I have lived here longer than I've lived in India. And I know the culture here. The empowerment is a big thing. Very quickly, I'll give you a story. Shimatsu had taken me on a 6-city tour for data integrity 5-6 years ago, Delhi being one of them. And I won't name the companies, but I went to one large company in the morning and gave a presentation, a huge auditorium, about 200 people. And I went to another large company and I noticed a sharp difference. In one company, only a few people were asking questions. They were gray hairs and they were making notes. When I say gray hairs, senior level people. And during the coffee break, tea break, all the others that were listening in, I didn't have time to drink my coffee. They had tons of questions, but they didn't ask in the real session. In the other company I went, it was diametrically the opposite. Everybody was raising their hand and asking questions, and just the gray hairs sitting there were making notes and quiet. And you think I had my biscuits and tea during the break? Yes, I did. Because they were asking questions during, not afterwards. And then I had a meeting with the CEO of one of the companies. I said, this is what, and that CEO is an American. So he wanted to meet and talk to me. And I said, this is what I noticed. He says, because in my company, I have told my supervisors, you are not going to manage, you're going to facilitate. And my employees are empowered. That is the crux of the data integrity problems in a company. Because one person can make a mistake and like a ripple in the pond, it goes across the organization. But when several people together make decisions, discuss and arrive at a decision, the propensity for making that mistakes diminishes tremendously. That's the whole part of better understanding by employees that problem solving and meeting is a key part of success. Okay, so attributes, clarity of key processes. It has to be very clear. Everybody has to understand their roles and responsibilities. Processes have well-defined ownership. One of the things when I go into the door of a company to audit, my first question is, do you have a list of all your computers that have GMP data in your organization? You will see it's very seldom. But if you go and read the PICS guidance, PICS on data integrity, they have it in section 9.1. Then if companies say, I have a list of all the GMP data computers, then I say, do you have access control? Latest access control, who is accessing, who has been granted authorization to access the system? And then if they show you a process, you'll be surprised to find how many of those people have already left the company, how many people haven't accessed the system for the last 1 year, and you start catching things. And then you say, geez, you people think you're in control of your process? I don't think so. You people have all these names sitting around and you don't have a process and procedure for access control, no SOP. Performance outcomes gets measured. There are KPIs. If you can't perform, how many miles you have traveled or where you are in your journey on the data integrity scale, got a good slide in the end. Process improvements move up a maturity continuum. That's the slide. Culture. very important, okay? And empowerment. What is the data? What is the reason people try to manipulate data? One of the three things, okay? Incentive, opportunity, attitude. There is an incentive to manipulate data, including if something is gone wrong, I need to fix it, otherwise I'll get fired. So there is an incentive there to keep your job. Out of spec, right? That's the incentive. Oh, everybody frowns upon it, so I'll just play around with my readings and bring it and say it passed. Not enough memory for software licenses. How many times have you seen that? Oh, we have 6 licenses, so the 7th person is borrowing somebody's password and using the software license. So there are incentives to do that. Opportunity. Oh, nobody is watching, so let me do something. Nobody will know. Well, that's why they say access control, audit trail. So audit trail, access control, so many things. So opportunity. And the last one is attitude. Oh, everybody works like that. Why should I not do it either? Everybody works, everybody is in a hurry, and we are all under pressure, hence we all work this way. Some excuses you find to justify your behavior, which is not desired. So this is the fraud triangle. You read up Joseph T. Wells, and this is the triangle of fraud. I'll go through very quickly. Data integrity problems occurred, no people controls, no physical or engineering controls, no business process controls. So no people controls, company culture, blame and fear. Oh, I didn't do it, he or she did it. Fear. Why do they behave that way? Because they are being constantly reminded by upper levels of management, you'll get fired, this will happen to you, we won't give you raises. There is no feeling of a family, a team spirit. That's another area, production targets. A good seasoned auditor will get in and first thing ask, show me your targets for the last quarter. How many units you produced month number 1, month 2, month 3, month 4. Okay, I said, so. And then you go to the period where the production targets, they produced a lot of maybe vials, 40,000 vials produced instead of the normal 20. You'll find a lot of data integrity problems there. Start your audit from that target. Show me your production. Show me your production target. Show me what you made, and you will see a lot of it. No employee awareness. People are not trained. And there is no, now, also please explain to the employees. Some of you I know are auditors today, but also, and some of you are managers. Please explain to them why they do what they have to do. This is not giving them just orders. Listen to me and do it this way. It does not work. So explain to them what will happen. Not you'll get fired. That's not what I'm saying. Explain. But if they don't do it this way, what are the implications to their own employees further down the line or elsewhere? What happens? We have to redo the work. We have to do to explain to them why they should do what they need to do. Complicated processes. You look at an SOP. I have seen SOPs when I go in to audit also overlapping. They say one way to do it here, in another SOP, the same task, completely different. No stakeholder involvement. How many times we have seen that? SOPs are written by an outside consultant who knows nothing, and then the employees are told, here, do it this way. But they were never asked, they were never consulted. People have a tendency, I'm sitting here in the US, I shouldn't be talking this way. People have a tendency to come to the US, bring in all these consultants, pay them all the high dollars, and then make them write all these SOPs. And then the operators say, what does this person know? He doesn't even work here. He doesn't. That's when things happen. So solutions, close supervision, walk the floor. You walk to help them. Sit down in the morning, get them together. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Review what happened yesterday. Walk the floor. not with the intent of firing them if they are sleeping on the job, but with the intent of helping them. Review and simplify, blame-free culture, and automation, you can read it. So these are all the people controls, improve the culture, have single team spirit. Design controls. I will not dwell much on this. I don't know whatever time it is. Yes, it's 11, a little bit more. Quickly, I'll go through this. So you can read about the design controls, alarming of CQA, CPP. And this has happened to me. I went into a company, auditing them. I went to the automation department and I said, show me your URS. Where is your CPP, CQA? And they told me, what are you talking about? We don't know. What does it stand for? And luckily, it was not a very large company. And I said, where is your R&D? Let me go and talk to your R&D person. He took me. He said, yeah, I know. He's the chief scientist and all. Soon as I looked at him, even before he could pull me in and say, sit down. And as soon as that person heard CPP, CQA, he said, sit down. I'll show it to you. He pulled out a folder, count of 10. He opened the page and showed me, here it is. And I looked at the manufacturing engineer. Why is it you don't know? But look at this. He immediately, so quickly. And that's the problem. They're not communicating. Alarming of CQ. And then forget, if they don't know the CQA, CPP in the alarm list, they are not being, then I went to the alarm list and I said, look, this is the CPP and you look at your alarm list. That is not even being alarmed. This is a problem. Aging systems. And one thing I've noticed, particularly, I hope I can take the liberty to say this because I am both. I am an American and an Indian also. There is a tendency that let us buy the cheapest. What they don't realize is why is this vendor selling something so very low? Because that is going out of fashion. It does not have so many things. I mean, I dealt with an Indian company 1 month ago. It was going very well talking to all the engineers, the IT people. The moment purchasing department came in, the only thing I wanted to just walk away. Just looking at dollars. No, that is why they become aging. By the time you even install a system, it's old because you went and bought the lowest in pricing. So that is what happens. And that is why you have problems in data integrity. There is no audit trail. So people are going in and making changes. Remember the triangle, opportunity on the left-hand side, green? That's what's happening because it's an aging system. So again, solution, design priority, operational complexity. Don't make it very complex. Don't design something very complex. Have a uniform design policy. Nowadays, yes, people are designing around the Windows system, but there were days when one system was Unix, another system was Linux, under the same roof, forget same company, same roof, same room. And there were so many problems with such things that, we couldn't trust the data. Remember I said data trustworthiness? The design was so bad. We said design itself is so bad, we can't trust any data. That's all. Business process controls. This is also very important. Please look at the one at the bottom, says compliance literacy. I'm really amazed. I talk to many people. And not that it does not happen in the US. I don't get an opportunity to go all the way up and talk to a CEO. But in India, I do talk. They have been very kind to even call me to say, we want to hear from you. But compliance literacy is very, very important. Everybody asks me is, what does the FDA want? And I say nothing. They're just coming to give you a 483. That what the FDA wants is to demonstrate to them that you know what their regulations are and to show them that these are the regulations, this is what we did, and we did this because this is the match with your regulations. That's what they're coming to see. And They are not expert in every area, okay? But they have the power and the logic to understand. And if you can show them compliance literacy, these are your regulations and these are our actions, and this is the basis for that, and it matches. And that's all that they want to see. Control, that you have control. So a lot of internal audits, many companies I go, they don't even have. They say, what is internal audit? What is an external audit? And big companies here in the US, big companies, I don't want to take the names, they're right on the, and it's amazing that we, the patients are having drugs from such companies manufacturing without having a clue to what's going on. Okay, so senior management, look at this one, senior management review of audit outcomes. For companies that have internal audits, I have asked middle level management, have you reviewed the audit report? They haven't. They say, oh, he did the audit, I asked him. And he says, no problems found. And we just filed the report. That is, that is the big problem. And it happens. So top contributing factors, employee ignorance and disinvolvement. Of course, if somebody is ignorant, if you have not trained that person and somebody is constantly beating up on the head without telling the person why the person is being told to do a thing, then there becomes a problem. Company culture, blame and fear, not my job. Oh, I didn't do it, she did it. And that culture is, finger pointing. Complexity and confusion of roles and responsibilities. I went and asked somebody, who is the owner of this SOP? They have in their regulation, every 2 years, they have to, look at their SOPs and revise them because business processes change. So I went into one company, I said, who is the SOP owner? Okay, bring that person in here. And they came. These are mock audits, by the way. I'm not an FDA inspector, but mock audits, and bring that person here. And the first thing I asked, are you aware this was revised a week ago? And she said, no. I said, but your name is here. Oh, and then she started asking all her colleagues, when did this happen? What happened? I said, your name is here, SOP owner. Why didn't you sign? Show me. So things happen like that, and you have to be very careful. You have to really clamp down and say, wait a second, who is the owner of a system? Who is the IT support? Bring them in. And that's what we have to do. Leadership, compliance, literacy. That's the next one. So I'm trying to, within a short time, I'm talking in small, short sentences. And but if you see these 4 bullets, they're all talking about the business process. Everybody has to be defined. Who is the SOP owner? Okay, this is the name. Bring that person in. There is no signature. There is no approval. Why is the name sitting there? Change the person then. Such things. This is the data integrity maturity model. This is the last to one slide. One more is there. And in this model, you see initial. And as you can see, you don't want to be in the initial stage. Ad hoc management, processes not defined, individual effort, no data management. So when you go to audit, you see this happening. In my audit report towards the end, I say you're at level 1. Now, what do we have to do to get to level 2? Well, have a disciplined process. What do you have to do? Groups in place, define roles and responsibilities. After you do a project, have a lessons learned report so that when the next project you do, you know what you did well, you keep doing that, but you also know what you did not do well, improve upon it. So you can be repeatable. Okay, repeatable means not repeat the things that you didn't do well, but repeatable, that the things you did well in the previous project, you keep doing that. So, but you're disciplined now. Everything is being, and then you get to the defined. You want to be in this state at all times. Best, not in initial or repeatable. And look at the word consistent. The C of the ALCOA, right? ALC, that C stands for consistent. Standard, consistent process. Don't you have your tablets in a consistent way? One in the morning, one in the evening, or either before. Consistency is one of the biggest things in our business. So when it becomes standard, consistent process, you ask what is repeatable and consistent. It's very close, very similar. But here you have data governance, data management. Everything is written down, documentation and approvals, documented testing and deployment, not just saying, oh yeah, we tested it. Where is your documentation? Not there. So when you have all that, this is a good place to be. Then you start to manage very well. Okay, that's stage number 4. That's good. Now it is really becoming manageable. You can predict what is going. Hey, we did it like this. You should not do it this way. You should do it like this. You can predict things, what will happen, predict your actions. And the last one is optimizing. That's the best, above and beyond where you want to be. But the best is to be in the defined, and that's where it's safe, not the best, safe. Managed is the best, and then you can start optimizing. This is my last slide. This is the trend, as you can see. It's very surprising. This is the US regulation 211.22, which means that your the QA is not very involved in most of the things that are being done in a company. You have to read that. And surprisingly, in 2021, it was the highest, this is the percentage of all the warning letters issued, was 31.588 was related to 211.22. But you see what the industry does, the moment this happens, the next year they fall very quickly, because there are people in the company looking at it. Oh, okay, this is what the FDA is looking at, and it falls. 211.68, this is the computer systems validation that has maintained in the 4 years. 2020 was a COVID year. So then again, 211.100, electronic batch records, batch release. Okay, 211.100. That topped in 2020, it was the highest, but it remained in the middle. So EBRs, electronic batch record reviews and release, batch record in general, that happens to be a problem. 211.160. So I won't touch that, but see what happened to 192 out of specification, OOS. 219, it was red, it was the topmost. It immediately went to number 3 in those 2 years, the COVID year of 2020, 2020. Again, it came up 2022. So I was asked when I presented this 2 weeks ago, where do you think the FDA will go to next? I said, well, look at OOS and you make sure that next year when they come, most of your out of spec has been done correctly and it is not lingering on. Clean out all of them. Typically, most of them are in the kappa. It becomes a kappa. So, and also keep an eye as you're dropping, make sure that your 16.3 to 11.160 laboratory controls remains below green, push it down. So this gives you a broad idea of the trend in warning letters. Okay, so I will end and we'll wait for the questions later, right?
Yes, sir. We'll take up the
Okay.
questions probably after Mr. Arjun's
Okay.
talk as well.
So Arjun, thanks for your patience, and I will have you people take it over from here. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Chinmay.
Thank you. And let me invite Mr. Arjun Guha, an MPharm gold medalist from Jadavpur University. And he is currently the Director of Consulting Operations at Life Science Consulting Private Limited, the Conval Group. As we know, Mr. Arjun has over 27 years of implementation experience, not only in Indian institutions, but also the US and European pharma industry. And his area of expertise includes the industrial computerization system deployments and the complex industrial applications, track and trace project management, and deployment of L1 to L5 solutions from SAP and many other solutions. Yes, so glad to mention that Mr. Arjun has authored a full chapter of good distribution practices published by the PDA in 2019, and it was edited by Dr. Smith, the Vice President of Paraxel. And this book has received the highest voting by the readers and subsequently received the PDA Reader's Choice Award for 2019. Mr. Arjun, we are so glad to have you here, and we are so keen to hear from your perspective, and especially on the perspective of the Indian regulations on the data integrity. And there is quite a misconception in the industry minds that the regulations on the Drugs and Cosmetics Act and rules are not so much elaborative as per the international standards. So could you please enlighten us on the kind of data integrity aspects being inculcated in the Indian regulations and clear the minds of the industry participants? Over to you, Mr. Arjun.
Yeah, thank you, Lakshmi ma'am, and really appreciate the kind support you had been providing us in the preparation of this whole session. And I will continue to request your support to present the slide deck and get started on that. And I also thank AIDCOC for giving me the opportunity to be here today and present to you. And of course, Udayji, who had been, shining light all through, and making Pharmexcel a very, very important organization in the Indian exports industry. Dr. Rubina Bose, my senior in the university, and also right now, we have all heard her, she could, actually spell out the entire ALCOA word by word, letter by letter, just as we got started. That clearly shows everybody's intent from the administrative level, from the Indian FDA level, how deeply we are all involved. So as we heard from Chinmay a little while ago, that, there are regulations, and also we heard from Dr. Bose that there are regulations worldwide now, with whether it's PICS or WHO, and whether it is FDA. This is coming out on a regular basis. It all started around 2012, 13, as we see. And being in the industry for so many years, we had always leaned back upon our DNC Act, and which is somewhere we had always been in India. Our regulations had always been the place where we should always go as the first step to, understand where we are with this. And when we started for this session, or prepared for this session, I said, hey, let me again go back and go to our roots of what we do have in our regulations. And it was a big surprise. And I'm just sharing with you my research on the DNC Acts and on the draft GSR 999 on Schedule M. And I will definitely take you through this in my next slides, and you will be surprised to see a lot of things which are already there. So next slide, please. So when I started, my investigation, I realized that there are the word data. If you look at the keyword data in our DNC Act and rules, it comes up more than 600 times, which clearly signifies that our regulators are primarily relying upon the evidences of data submitted by the industry for evaluations of their, and based on that, they approve the licensing, they approve the products, they approve everything. I'm not going to read out every word in this slide, but I will try to just again and again stress that data is the basis of any understanding of our products, which means that the data which is reaching the FDA's table should be trustworthy. And that takes me back to Chinmay's first slide, which he explained the trustworthiness of the data. And as you can see, any data which is in the process of being submitted to the regulators, if they are not trustworthy, FDA will not be in a position to rely upon the submission. And therefore, it makes it so pertinent to discuss about the word data in all stages of our regulation which is there. I started off with my presentation slide, which is on clinical trial submissions to licensing authority. And I do not go by all the clauses because all of you here, many of you here are from the FDA, so you know all the clauses. And it's just that, I'm just picking out the words from the law itself. And you can clearly see that the licensing authority is relying on trustworthy data from all places, if you can look at the details here. And the inspection of such data, including, your records, documents, books, logs, everything combined together gives the FDA the opportunity to understand the product, the compliance of the processes, the controls in it, and only based on that data, FDA can make a decision of the next steps which needs to be taken. Next slide, please. Now, this is for the whole human blood and blood components. And you can see over there also, there is a mention about data. For new drug applications, the data of all the pharmacokinetics, information, stability studies, animal toxicity, these are, critical data. And these are the data which FDA relies on for taking a effective decision on the product. So how does the data reach you? How does the company make sure that the data they're being submitting to the FDA is reliable? That is now, coming into the big picture. And you can see now that all these tie down to the topic of data integrity. Next slide, please. Now, when I started looking into Schedule M, I realized that we should have a look into Schedule L first, where we actually found some terminologies which are already there. You heard about the word raw data. You heard about computerized systems, analytical data. So what really, really raw data means is, as per, what I could, everybody has their own definition. So I could actually relate it when I was starting my career and I was in the labs and I started, noting down some simple KFR data, and I didn't had a, lab notebook or an electronic notebook in those days. So what I did very easily was I looked into the, values and I wrote it down in my hand. So I wrote it in my hand and I then transferred it to a piece of paper in the lab when I reached out and, started writing it. And my boss, unfortunately, he's no more. So he asked me, what did you do? So I said, I wrote down the values in the lab. So he said, now that was your hand on which you wrote. So that's your raw data. Now you cannot wash your hand. Are you getting what I'm saying? Raw data is the data at the time you look at the system and you record the data. That's the first time the data is actually read, is the raw data. It can't be taken away at any point of time. So now the definition being clear, you can understand what the whole implication is. This raw data remains all over the life cycle of the product till the product expires. Data handling and all that comes into picture later on. The further, if you look into the next slide, you will see there is a clear explanation about how to, handle paper-based records. And if you are making a mistake, what should you be doing to correct those data? This is in line, if you read through the first sentence, it is in line with every other regulation which is there in, PICS or WHO or FDA. The logic remains exactly the same. And if you are using electronic systems today, they also ask for a reason for change whenever you are changing the data. And that's what Chinmay also said, that data can be changed provided you justify the reason why you are changing that data. And the word original entry pops up here, which Chinmay explained in his earlier sentence. And he also mentioned about audit trail. It's there in our regulation as well. The word data integrity surprisingly doesn't pop up in Schedule M, but it does in Schedule L. And if you read data integrity and security, so two words coming together under one roof is in Schedule L, shall be maintained. And you can see accessible to any, it should not be accessible to any unauthorized person. That's the same role-based access control, which we just talked about a little while ago. Then we talked about data archivals, the same topic which we just talked, prevent damage or deterioration and loss. So we are talking about now data security. How will you make sure that the data which you have generated is secured across its life cycle? So next slide, please. Schedule L further goes out to talk about paper documentation. How long should it be kept? And again, the raw data, how that should be maintained. And then it talks about if you are storing it on a tape or disk, which was actually very common till the cloud applications came in, how that should be, archived, how that should be stored. Raw data on thermal paper might fade away. These are the actual activities which are done in the labs. And the labs are the heart of the pharmaceutical organization. I mean, I have been into all the areas, but if we want to start any audit, or if FDA wants to start any audit, all of you who are in auditing domain, where will you go? I mean, shop floor is of course there, but the store of all the brain of the company is in the labs. So there you will find all this information. And when you see at the data level, you will see all these regulations are already pointing towards date and timestamps. They are already pointing towards archival. They're already pointing towards paper documentation. They're pointing towards electronic documentation. Next slide, please. Now, this is the Schedule M as amended up to December 2016. So I just looked into at a very, very high level, and I saw that the word data is mentioned in two places. The data generation part is included, analysis of appropriate data, and effectiveness of QMS has been mentioned, which are exactly the way the other regulations are talking about. And if we go to the next slide, which is the GRR 99, exactly. So these are the things will be further updated. So if you see here also the data, how it is recorded in electronic data processing. And now when I come down to the specifics about what it is talking about, so it says authorized persons, it says access shall be restricted, it says batch records electronically stored shall be protected by a suitable backup. During the period of retention, all relevant data shall be readily available. What does it all imply? The regulation had been there in 2016, which tells about what needs to be done. Next slide, please. Now, here in the draft GSR 999, which is what we are now looking at, this mentions a little more about what we had been discussing overall. So this is the culmination of what we have discussed till now and what is there coming up in the draft GSR. Now we hear the term documented evidence. That's the word which starts the regulations for US FDA as well. We hear the term traceability. Okay, everybody understands traceability, whoever is in the validation domain, the requirements traceability matrix. The audit trail word comes up again and again over here. Availability of data. So it is talking about the data availability, which is a part of ALCOA. It is a part of confidentiality, integrity, availability in all information security domains. That's also there. Now, data entry comes up here in a very clear way in this regulation where it talks about clear, legible, and indelible records to be created. So data entry part is directly referencing to ALCOA Plus. Although here the focus is towards paper records, but ALCOA Plus still remains on both paper and electronic records. And the next section talks about electronic data processing. Only authorized persons shall be able to enter or modify data in computerized systems. It talks about role-based access controls. Record of changes and deletions. Okay, so that means again, audit trails shall be restricted by passwords or other means, and the entry of critical data shall be independently checked, which is in line with any other regulation we have read till date. So batch records which are stored electronically shall be protected by backups. And, it talks about the topic of backup, restoration, archival. What misses out over here compared to other regulations is the terminology restoration. We hear the term backup in the regulation several times. Archival, we have also heard about, but restoration, that's a very critical step, and that's formally required to be tested by FDAs or MHRAs or even other European and PICS regulations, so that you can restore the data back into the system at a particular point of time. And that testing is a formal requirement for various regulations. And this is where the regulators and the auditors should go and check whether restoration testing is performed. What is the frequency? How long it is being done? And all that. So next slide, please. Now, a specific section of computerized system has been introduced, section 22 in the draft GSR, and this talks about the role-based access controls. There is a specific section which tells about controls to prevent omission in data. In technical terms, this is called as data loss prevention, which is a concept of controlled shutdown. So if there is a power failure for any electronic system, it cannot just switch off on its own. There is a process step which gets initiated at the time the power goes out, and there is an automatic process of controlled shutdown, which is a part of validation testing. All those of us in our CSV domain, we know what this means. And this is one of the concepts of data loss prevention, so that the last data element doesn't get deleted at any point of time. Now for auditors, this is what they have to go and look at. What happens during a power failure? What does the system, how is the system behavior? This is a very important activity, and this is already there in the draft GSR. And I'm very happy to see that these concepts are already covered. Then data change made, and the previous entries in the person who made the change is exactly the word when we talk about audit trails. Who did it, why he did it, when did he do it? Okay. Now, what I did was, while reading through the regulations, I also checked in how FDA in US explains the terminology of audit trail review. And if you see the section below, you can clearly see that audit trails, basically are reviewed based upon a particular mechanism. And what the US FDA is talking about is a quality system approach for audit trail reviews. And that's exactly what our local FDA can easily go and review. We don't need any other agency to come and check how the audit trail review is and what it should do. So it's just the part of the QMS. Next slide, please. And I further go on that to explain the FDA regulations in a little bit more. What should be the frequency of the review? And here there is a regulation in FDA which clearly mentions 211188B that after each significant step in manufacturing, processing, packaging, or holding, you need to review the audit trails. And as Chinmay mentioned earlier, 211.22 in the FDA regulation requires that the data review has to be performed before batch release. So that's the place where everything ends. At the time of batch release, the final check by QA that, hey, this is a checklist. Okay, all the audit trail reviews were done at the right time. Thank you very much. The batch is being released based on this. And let me also explain that, this is not following any specific regulation. They're telling that you have to do like this or like that. It all depends upon your QMS and your way. I mean, as a company, they can decide on the review frequency. And they should be doing this based upon the knowledge of your processes and the risk assessment tools which they are utilizing. And how critical is the data? For example, for anti-cancer products, the frequencies may be different. For normal oral solids, the frequencies may be different. What are the control mechanisms in place? What is the impact on the product quality? So all these combination factors, you will decide. Based upon that, you can decide what is the frequency of audit trail review. And this basically also becomes part of the exception reporting process. So we talked about electronic batch records. So in electronic batch records, the exception reporting processes are very, very nicely, managed electronically. And there are also, validated search tools that identifies and documents predetermined abnormal data. And these are the reasons why today you see that there is an explosion of various validation organizations, EQMS, electronic validation, VLMS we call it. So all these organizations who are there across the world, they are coming together. Next slide, please. Now here the schedule M specifically talks about an area which we understand as technical controls, or which we talk about as configuration specifications, where the schedule M says that where critical data are being entered, then the system should have some mechanism in place to manage these things. Okay, so these are part of technical control. So if you are saying that my data are all numeric in nature, they are only up to 13 digits. So the system should have a mechanism in place that it cannot go beyond 13 digits. If it is only numeric, you cannot write any alphabets there. So there are various ways to configure a system in such a way that you are able to manage it without, it is called as error proofing of the system. And these are part of the configuration specifications. So when an auditor goes inside the facility, the first thing when they see an electronic system is they will ask, show me the configuration specifications. Do you have it? If the company says yes, then look at it and find out that what are the technical controls in place. I have given the Nomura guideline, NAMUR guideline, which is an European guideline to explain the configuration specifications definition here, which is, it is saying that all available functions of a component should be specified and documented. Their fundamental system behavior is independent of the use case should be described. And incorrect behavior in the sense of mal-operation should never initiate an unintentional, unknown, and unexpected mode. So this is the basis of understanding how the technical operations of a system works. Then we look at backup. Again, you see in the next section, backup, permanent loss of records. It is all again getting into this place of data protection, data backup, restoration testing. And I've used the terms recovery time objective, recovery point objective. For those who are in the industry, they understand that recovery time is at the, what is the time it requires for the system to be restored back. So it is an objective which is set right up front when you decide upon procuring a system, or when you decide upon based on the criticality of the system. It can be 1 hour to 24 hours, how fast you want the system to recover. And based on that, all the backend systems are designed accordingly. And recovery point objective is the point up to which you will expect a data loss to happen. And up to that point, the data will be available in the system without any issues. And after that, the remaining data will not be available. You accept that risk, and on basis of that, you decide on the recovery point objective. Then the topic of data from continuous monitoring operations, for example, temperature, humidity. Nowadays, everything is electronics, SCADA systems for continuous monitoring operations, such as, in fermentation, also in biologics facilities, which forms a part of the batch record. How those data needs to be captured are mentioned here. Next slide, please. Now here again in the new draft GSR, the topic of raw data generated during each test comes up. So the raw data appears in the new section in a different area, which is primarily in the section of laboratory control records. And if you read the complete sentence, you will clearly see that, the sections ideally belongs to Schedule L, but it has become also a part of Schedule M. So the significance of raw data has become very, very important in the new update, which is coming up. Now, any OOS topic, if you read through that sentence, I would extend the word OOS to not only just out of specification, it can be also out of trend, out of limits. You can put OOX in that place, results obtained. So you need to investigate such issues. And this requires analysis of the data. And if that data in the first place is contaminated data, you will never be able to come to an understanding about what is the root cause. So RCAs will always fail as long as you are not able to make sure that your data is really, really trustworthy. So I believe that with further enhancements of this regulation, whenever it gets released in the coming years after, or coming days, I would say, it becomes one of the at par with the other global regulations. And we already have all what we need from regulators' perspective, from auditors' perspective, to also go back and, go through our own schedules and believe in our regulations do have all the necessary instruments in place, which helps us to understand not only the US regulations or European regulations, but also the Indian regulatory requirements. And that's my summary, which I had done my own research. I am sure that I am not the expert in doing such research, because I'm not here to be an expert. I'm here to be with you. I'm part of you, and I'm just a part of member of the proud Indian pharmaceutical industry, where we actually believe in quality, which cannot be controlled, and it must be built into the system. With that, I end my presentation and hand over for Q&A back to you, Lakshmi. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arjunji, for such an elaborate presentation and deep dive into the current Indian regulations touching upon the data integrity aspect. And in the interest of the time, I would quickly take few questions received from the audience. And one of the questions from Mr. Subrata Chakravarti, so his statement is that one of the reasons for drug shortage identified in the US FDA drug shortage report was market does not recognize and reward manufacturers for mature quality management system. I think this is also applicable for data integrity issues. So how do you see a solution to this? Perhaps Mr. Chinmay, would you like to discuss on that?
Yeah, I will try because I didn't understand. I was going through the chat. It says market does not recognize and reward. Market, if you have the drug, my sense is market goes and buys it. So that itself is a reward. That itself is a recognition. And I don't know what even that FDA shortage report means, that market does not recognize and reward manufacturers for mature quality management systems. That's why I can't say much. Is the shortage due to the QMS? How can it be for the QMS? It's just a recording mechanism. So.
All right, so maybe we can move on to the next questions. And I think the next question from anonymous attendee that has a revised Schedule M of 2018 is GSR 999 implemented. Maybe Mr. Arjun, would you like to touch upon that?
No, I believe, here the 2018 regulations came out as a draft, and maybe our regulators, can tell us more about it. I mean, Dr. Rubina can tell, why that has not been published. I believe that's going to be updated further with the recent updates from WHO. Maybe that's one of the reasons, but I leave it to, the regulators to tell exactly the reason behind it.
Lakshmi, want to answer me, or you want to take more questions and then we can come?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Let me go to the next question. This question is from Mr. Edward Goodman for Chinmay in specific. Please expand on what information should be captured in preparing DI metrics. Chinmay, would you like to?
Yeah, please expand on what information should be captured in preparing DI metrics. Well, there are things that I would do in DI metrics. That's a very good question, in the sense, how many people are aware or look at their training records? How many people have actually attended the training? Are they being trained every half an hour, refresher training once a year? And how many in a department or in a group have been trained? That is sensitivity, right? Next is internal audits. Are data integrity specific internal audits being performed? And who is looking at those reports? Of course, these are in stage 3 and 4. Now, stage 1 and 2, I mean, there are low-hanging fruits right there. How many SOPs are there? And are people following those SOPs? You can get all that from DI report. Additional things would be on equipment. What is the level of equipment? I mean, how old are they? Do they have all these features? Capture it, have a scoring card. And so you can set your own, in a company, you can set your own scales. And then, but it has to be fixed. It can't vary year to year. And thereby you can measure how what is the maturity. So you just have to decide on these things. Look at the 4 main reasons that I had the slide and go there and look at it. That's all.
Yeah, a supplementary question to the similar maturity model. So how do you think, like, for a company to evolve from an initial stage to an optimized stage, how long does it require for a company to evolve from the initial stage to optimized stage of a maturity model?
Yeah, one thing I can tell you, it is not 4 or 5 months. It takes a long time, because it is not just going from the bottom of the rung to the top of the rung in 4 or 5 months. I had some criteria, right? Going from this stage to this stage to this stage, all that takes time. You have to write all those SOPs. You have to see that they are not overlapping. So, and then even the Gemba walks, if all your equipment is updated, has all the features of Part 11, or you're using outdated equipment. I've known of companies, they have a graduated plan. They don't have so much of money to go swap out everything in one go. So it's difficult to predict. But one thing is important, is the management commitment. If there is no management commitment, then it's a tough sell to the regulators. That's very important.
That's right. So the commitment by the management is very crucial, as you have rightly pointed out. And
I'm sorry. I went to a company and they had actually hired me because their PAI had failed. They had a product. They spent tons of money on it, on research, and maybe 8-9 years of so many things. And then it failed. Now, when it failed, they brought in consultants. I was one of them. And they said, come and look at what we need to do. And we would have regular meetings. Guess who used to attend that meeting and make commitments on the spot? The CFO. He would even say, go ahead, place orders on the equipment. I'll move the paperwork through my department, follow all the procedures. They have accounting procedures. But he would give a thing on the spot. Approved. He would sit with the consultants and ask the questions. So once bitten, twice shy. So that is why a CFO was attending. It was about 500 employees in the company. So it had to take that. So that's commitment of management.
Right, sir. So while we have talked much on the trustworthiness of the data, so there is one question from Mr. Goswami that if a manufacturer could not afford automated systems and if he is taken a call to make the manual operated machines, so in that case, how to judge the trustworthiness?
What's it? Arjun, you want to answer? I don't know where that is. Oh, for Mr.
Bhavesh Goswami.
So here he's
Okay.
It's a very typical scenario, Chinmay. Maybe you try to answer and then I'll chip in.
Okay. If a manufacturer didn't have any machine which generate any data, means manually operated machine, in that case, how to judge trustworthiness, right? So you're by the way, data integrity, if you have not, I should have stressed it, applies to both paper records and electronic records, which is automated system. So it applies to both. So if it is a paper record, then frequent supervision. Have the supervisor go very frequently and check data. Follow the process. That's a procedural control now. It's not a technical control anymore. So once it becomes procedural, then make sure you have the resources, and that is the trustworthiness. One of the things I go and do is when I enter the workspace, whether it is in a lab, one of the first things we do is open the drawers and see if there are any pencils, erasers, whiteouts. And if it is there in the work areas, then we say, well, something is going on here. Then we even go and look at the garbage cans and all. Sometimes papers are thrown away and rewritten and all that. So that's all that we look at. So it applies to paper records, definitely. Arjun, if you have anything to add.
No, I mean, you are spot on that. But, when it takes me back to when we got started in our careers in the industry, that was way before even Part 11 was written. We were all working with our own hands on the shop floor, on the warehouses, and there was no much of electronics in those days. Okay. So what actually made the system work? I mean, if you talk about, any Indian organization or the Pfizer's or GSK's in India, they had very, very good paper-based systems, which made sure that all the critical process parameters were very clearly mentioned in the batch records, in the various, process steps. And there was a 4I principle, which was like one person records, and then there is a supervisory control. So a supervisor used to come, especially for the critical process records, which are going to be written. Immediately a supervisor will double check, and that always used to work. The 4I independent principle used to work. And that's where, when, Bhavesh, you are going to audit, you need to see manually operated machines are still throwing some information about the product. They do, they really do. And in those cases, how those data are being generated at source. So that's the raw data, how the raw data is being generated, who is writing it, who is looking into that data, what is the mechanism in the QMS which is written to handle this sort of data. So that's where you should look into it, because data integrity is not just a part of looking into a specific machine, but it is looking into how the data is generated right at the point it is generated till the entire life cycle. So it goes across the batch record where it is getting stored, and you go behind the archival of the data. So where is the final record stored? Where is your storage area? How do you store it for long term? So you can get into all those spaces after that. Okay.
Thanks for the detailed explanation on that part. So let me take on to the next question. I think we have got a couple of questions from Dr. P.V.N. Prasad, the former Joint Drugs Controller of India. So let me read out those questions. So he wanted to know how to ensure the data is of good quality, especially of clinical data in respect of efficacy and safety, especially in the case of drugs for the approval of emergency use authorization with the limited options available. So how to rely on the data? So this is more of a practical question that the regulators have experienced in the past 2-3 years. So Chinmayji, would you like to comment on that?
I think Arjun has already answered that with the 4I principle. That's the best you can do with data quality, is that, I have an example. Very big company, went to the micro lab. There was this person who was checking Petri dishes for the number of growth, right? And the person had gloves on, would look at under the microscope about 6 or 7 Petri dishes, and then throw the gloves away, turn around, make the entry on a laptop, and again go back, put on fresh gloves, and again take another set of 6 or 7 Petri dishes. So I went in, I watched her, and I asked her, and she explained what she was doing. The lab manager was with me. I said, first of all, this is not contemporaneous, okay? And if it's not contemporaneous, the quality is bad. Trustworthiness and quality go hand in hand. So no, I remember how many, each Petri dish, okay? 5 or 6, and she remembers what was the things, and then she goes and writes. So I said, first of all, it's not contemporaneous. When you are reading it under the microscope, 6 colonies, it has to be recorded immediately somewhere. So, okay, what do? I said, have a second person sitting at the keyboard, because she couldn't use it with the gloves because they're contaminated, right? The health thing says she has to throw the gloves, then touch the keyboard. So, okay, you wear your gloves, you don't have to throw it, just call out the number. So she was calling out the number, and there was this person sitting. You think I could still trust that data? Absolutely not. Why? Because there should be a read back. The read back is, if I say the number of growths is 6, the person entered what is in the computer, the person has to read what is in the computer, not what the person heard. Has to read what was been entered in the computer, and the person's actually sitting under the microscope, correct. So you see the circle of reliability now. And that is what reliability, the quality of the data is. A read back, 4 pair of eyes, and even circling back 2 times. This is what I said. This is what I entered in the computer, and the person who originated the data. And so it's the same principle, calibration, same thing. That's where data is created and checked.
There is another question also from Dr. Vivian Prasad about the AI models proposed to detect or predict the data breach in the critical areas. Are there any artificial AI models proposed to detect or predict the data breach in the critical areas?
Arjun, I don't know. I'm not looking at AI. I read the AI paper put out by the FDA.
No,
And
I mean, Chinmay, actually, that is where, I have some inhibitions also because, we forget about our own intelligence and look after artificial intelligence. So when we have our own intelligence, then we shouldn't look into artificial intelligence in the first place. AI is something which is for routine operations. So first of all, you cannot have an AI to do discovery operations. That's not where the application of AI is. Okay, all the robotics or applications on AI are to basically reduce the routine workload. So anything which you are doing as a part of routine operations can be reduced. Manual workload can be reduced by putting in some AI tools. But if you are trying to use AI for any detections, that is not possible. That is where your investigation process, your QRM, ICH Q9 will come in picture. Your risk assessment processes should come into picture. So, somewhere we can't rely upon these electronic tools, although you have augmented realities and you have all those, fancy terms. But at the end of the day, on the shop floor, in a pharmaceutical industry, it is the human intelligence which takes precedence over all other electronic systems. That's where the science is, and we can't disregard the science. Once the science is understood, then only we get into the technology part. So that is why many companies have this department called manufacturing science and technology. It's not the other way around, like technology and science. So we have to understand the science first to understand what we are, what business we are in, what product we are manufacturing, what is the criticality of the product. Any biologics facility, vaccines facility, there the science is way much more complex than a common OSD facility. So based upon where we are, the importance and significance changes. So that's how we should look into the whole context. When data integrity also topic is being discussed, we should understand, where the criticality on the business lies.
Yeah, the FDA has identified 4 areas where they think it could be of help. And if you look at the 4 areas, it is in the supply chain, it is in the predictability, behavior prediction, where the forces, the science of interaction of forces are known. For example, in a batch control, when a batch of product is going from one stage to the next stage, to the third stage and the fourth stage, it is producing alarms, it is deviating from expected behavior. And typically what happens between stage 1 and stage 2, you can give a correction in the stage 2 to bring the product back within spec, because you don't have to wait right up to the end, otherwise you have to throw the product. And AI is being used in those areas. But the thing is, you have to model the system correctly. You have to understand the forces that shape that system. Once you understand and model it correctly, then you can write routines to continuously give the correction as the batch is moving through the flow. But on DI, it is human factors, which is very complex. As I said, people controls. So, that's not science and technology at all. It's people behavior, which is a complex thing.
Oh, thanks for the deliberation, sir. So in the interest of time, I'll be taking only one more question, and perhaps I'll request the guest speakers to answer rest of the questions via emails, or I'll share the contacts of both the speakers also, and the audience can reach out and have a discussion, deliberate discussions on that. So the last question, maybe I'll be taking this from anonymous attendee. That for an electronic system, does the system need to be validated to be compliant with the data integrity principles? How this DI principles implies for the electronic system protocol execution?
Arjun?
Arjun, would you like to?
No, Arjun, before you answer, I don't know why this mysterious anonymous attendee, he can tell his name.
Yeah, I mean, the anonymous is asking very good questions, that is for sure. And the answer for that is the whole purpose of, the regulations, sort of slowing down a little bit, because technology is moving so fast in the last 10 years. Just imagine the amount of technological explosion which has happened. I mean, today we are all sitting in various parts of the world. We are all connected together. I can see people joining from Japan, across Europe, India, and now, East and West coast of Europe also joining. So, what does this imply is the regulations have to keep up with the speed of technological advancements, which means that today's world is no longer, we can have paper, and it is no longer sustainable. We can clearly see that. Therefore, there are various organizations, small and big, and many good organizations who are in our country selling products like EQMS, electronic validation systems. Various tools are available. Just they are at a very low ceiling price, is very low to get into paperless mode. So rather than getting into another set of discussions about how to have a control on data integrity on paper, the easiest approach is to go paperless. And when you do that, there are few advantages, and you can take advantage of one thing, that all your things will be on your system. You can control it very nicely, and you can actually manage the whole program very well. And as Chinmay said, when auditors come in, they don't have time. I mean, we are talking about an FDA visiting your facility, and you say, sir, please wait, I am going to get a pile of paper from building number 3. And do you expect FDA to wait? The answer is no. US FDA gives 3 minutes for a person to come with the records. Why can't they do it for Indian FDA? Why does the Indian FDA have to wait for 1 hour for a set of batch records to come in?
Yeah. So, my end is that I'm reading the question over and over again. It says electronic system. Does the system need to be validated to compliant with data integrity principles? Answer is yes. You have to validate those. And if you ask me, though you haven't asked, I'm going to stretch that question, is what are the data integrity principles? I would strongly recommend you read the FDA's 2002 guidance on scope and application of Part 11. They said they will only look at 4 areas. First area being access control. You have to validate for that. Second area, audit trail. It's all in the guidance. You have to validate for the audit trail. That audit trails are a feature in there. Third thing is a change management system. Now that's a system within itself, that you have a good QMS or change management system. And what is the fourth one? It's not, but the thing is, yes, that's what you do. Now, backup and recovery. So that's the fourth one. So you have to, when you do validation, those are the areas. And when I go for a CSV audit, those are the 4 things I look for. And I say, where is your backup and recovery? Is it on a schedule? Is it automated? And make sure, please, backup and recovery should not leave your system. I've seen many companies do that. They put a USB drive, a portable drive, and say, yes, we have validated for backup. No, portable drive backup is not accepted by the FDA. It should be within your network of control. It goes on the network, and there is, whether you back it up to a cloud or a controlled drive. So these are the 4 areas you make sure you validate. And that's as per the guidance, 2002, scope and application.
And Chinmay, to add to all this is, these are the areas which cannot be validated at the vendor stage. When we are doing FAT of a automation system vendor, these are the areas which can't be done. So that's why when we see some vendors, sort of claiming that they are Part 11 compliant and so on, do not accept that as a compliance sort of a mechanism, because you can't. If it is written in the law, and according to our Schedule M, if it is written in the law, the validation has to be done in situ. That means the product has to be procured, installed in your premises, and then you validate it based upon your mechanisms and your procedures. You cannot do a backup and restoration testing at vendor premises. So those are things which makes sure that you always have to validate when the system is within your environment. Then you can say that my system is qualified. That's the basis of all discussions we are having today.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, appreciate your deep insights on this subject, and I'm sure the participants must have learned a lot of new things in today's program. So let me now take the opportunity to again invite Dr. Rubina Bose, ma'am, for the concluding remarks, please.
I think that was not needed. Actually, it was so beautifully, and it was really a very good experience from the 2 enlightened speakers, Chinmay and Arjun. Thank you very much. And the simplicity of your presentation was the most welcome. How you have very simplifyingly, actually you have simplified the matter. And thanks for highlighting us, the Chinmay, for this, the management responsibility, trustworthiness, when you give a class or when you take a training, who is present, whose commitment is necessary, and whose assurance is necessary for each employee's empowerment, that they actually come with the truth when there is an out of specification, when there is a mistake, that it can be taken up, and it should not be, actually we should not, the company should not, there should not be a punishment, but it should be actually investigated, and the completion of the CAPA. So this was very important for the people, that your mistake will not be taken for a punishment, but this women empowerment is so important. And the responsibility, senior management's responsibilities, which is also a part of the quality management system. And also thank you, Arjun, for making our task so easy, explaining each and every place where you have seen the data, and that it doesn't need, even if the Schedule M GSR 999 is published or not published right at this point of time, but it is in place. Then the clinical trial in the NDCT rules, the falsification of data has also implied for some punishment, even in the new drugs and clinical trial rules, and also the Schedule L1 and the entire Schedule M talks about it, which you have explained so beautifully and so elaborately. Thank you very much. So I think I'll it is over to the Lakshmi and Uday Vashkeji. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And we have no further words, in fact, to praise the kind of a work that both Mr. Arjun and Chinmay has done, both on the international perspective and the industry's practices needed, and on the Indian regulations. You have made our job also so simple to understand ourselves and for the industry as well. And may I also just invite our Honorary Director General, Mr. Uday Bhaskar, for his remarks, please.
Lakshmi, I don't want to waste further time of Mr. Chinmay. So we're already more than 15 minutes late. My reply to the 17th question of anonymous the attendee is about why the Schedule M draft is not implemented. It is to the regulator. It's better you ask in the government and Minister of Health, the regulators like Rubina or BBN or whoever is there, Lakshmi. Once the act is amendmented, they will come into the picture. They're not the people to take the policy decision. Anyhow, I'm very much immensely happy and enlightened the kind of presentations by Chinmay Roy and Arjun Guha. I loved their presentation, and the answer what he has given, Arjun Guha, particularly about we are not having a machinery and how we can do that. That the machines were not there. We were regulators from 1989. We used to verify the documents and supervisors, and so it's a very the kind of answers they have given is excellent. And Lakshmi, thank you very much, and Rubina and all the speakers for also giving me an opportunity to speak for a couple of minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. And I once again take this opportunity from on behalf of All India Drugs Control Officers Confederation for the time taken out and the kind of knowledge that you have shared, both Mr. Chinmay and Arjun, for the benefit of our members and also for the industry. And also Dr. Rubina Bose, ma'am, for joining despite your busy schedule and joining us again on this day. And thanks all the participants for your patient listening, and stay tuned to our future programs. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.